Best counseling service on this side of heaven. Now, I totally disagree with the way things are going, but you can't be angry because that's what the enemy wants. He wants to control you. They do things to make you mad so they can control you. It's like being married, and the wife would do things to make you mad, or she'll do things to make you feel good. And men do that to women too when they want something from the woman, especially sex. They'll make her feel good, or they'll make her angry. And the woman's gonna have to say, you don't want to be angry. You want to speak up. You want to disagree with what's going on. It's wrong, but do not be angry. Then you won't have fear. You won't have doubt. You won't have worries. You'll be able to see, but you got to stay away from anger. That's why you must forgive your mothers and your fathers so that you can overcome the spirit of anger. It's a spirit and it's wicked. Nothing good in anger because it has no love, folks. You need love to defeat evil. And love is not a weakness. It's a strength. It's from God. It's His nature. You can't run from evil within yourself or outside of self. You got to deal with it. And you need good in order to deal with evil. And God is good. You need to return to the Father. And you'll see within you, He will fight the battle for you. And He will fight it without, because He will show you how to deal with it. And you will have no fear. Love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your might, along with nothing else. Nothing else means yourself, your children, your wife, your things, your ego, your reputation, and all that. You can't care about any of that. The children of anger will use it to control you. But if you love God, He will renew your mind, and none of those things will be before Him. And so when they go after you, oh, well, you may take my body, you may take my things, but you're not going to take my soul. And that's a true reality. Isn't he Mexican?
Colombian.
He calls himself American.
What is this?
Anchor Baby.
And in this corner, it's the American Anchor Baby.
Daddy's home.
That's an offensive term. People find that hurtful.
You mean it's not politically correct? Excuse me. I'll use the word anchor baby. You know, he's an anchor baby in Canada.
Tell him we still rolling with Trump, too.
Anchor baby, the whole thing sounds horrific. You're just making it sound like immigrants are these horrific, greedy people.
Ustedes pueden aceptar mi negocio o aceptar las consecuencias. Plata o plomo.
So you would be considered white, in my opinion.
You the blackest one in this room,
I think so.
And what happened was his mama got pregnant on the other side of the border, and then a few hours before, just before it was time for him to pop out, she jumped across the border and let him fall on American soil. So he became the anchor baby. They don't call him the anchor baby for nothing. Amazing.
We like this anchor baby, right?
Hello, I'm the American Anchor Baby, and this is my show. Thank you for tuning in on this fine Wednesday. Time to get it into the show here. We got a bit of a show to get into, and it's a pleasure to be back. So welcome to the show. I'm the American Anchor Baby. So I see calls coming in and all that. What can I say? We're going to get into a couple of things here today. I had something on my mind, but that's not too important. Listen, they're acquitting Diddy and all that. And it's interesting because I had mentioned the whole thing before. And I think I finally can crystallize what it is that mattered to me about this whole trial about Diddy. It wasn't about the details or the craziness or government conspiracy. There's all these places people went with it. And I think I can finally crystallize how this can maybe come about. And so they acquitted him of the worst charges, and we'll do that briefly. We'll do that for a little bit, and we'll get into a number of things here. Like I said, it's a fine Wednesday to get into a number of things and to maybe learn about the tiny microscopic creatures that live in our water. And I hope this isn't fake news. It's totally, or else we'll lose a whole segment here. And then what are we going to do? We got plenty to get into, I think, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome, all my viewers on rumble.com/American Anchor Baby, punchy.tv/Anchor Baby. And, of course, here on YouTube, how you doing, everybody? Welcome. Look, you could call in. I see you calling in, 888-775-3773. You got something on your mind, something you want to say? Let's see here. I might even just do a call here in a moment. People want to talk about the big, beautiful bill. We'll take it easy here on this Wednesday. But, yeah, we'll get into it because Diddy here, there's something I'll put it together here for you in a moment. Welcome, everybody. I see you, Double Edge, Christopher, Bobby, Golden Rule, Lord of the Pies. Is that Jep? How you doing, C-Sal? Ergo Luna, say the 48th agent. How you doing? Welcome, everybody. Clamoring for the crowns. But so quick to clamor for the crown in the chat, but you won't even click the like button. Don't be rude. You're here having fun already. You already got the crowns. So take it easy. Kick back. Click the like button. Don't be rude. Say hello in the chat. Jump on in. Fox News, Jesse, and the AP already covered this. Hold on. But not like this. I don't think anybody covered it like this. And I want to get into it, honestly. Hold on for me, callers. You'll have to hold on for me, please. Let me get into what I want to say. Something interesting here. Then we could do calls, super chats, and all that. Appreciate the patience. 888-775-3773. What else? Did anybody catch, by the way, just since we're getting into it easy peasy here, anybody catch this debate last night? It was between Dinesh D'Souza, Nick Fuentes. I was going to not even say anything about it because what do I even have to say? I just found it interesting. That's why the intro was a little funny. I was trying to make an executive decision right on the spot. Do I preamble about Dinesh D'Souza and the Fuentes debate? I guess I am already, huh? I'm a person who does things and has opinions and emotions. Okay, it's not all just news. And it was interesting. If anybody saw it, it was hosted by Alex Jones over there on InfoWars, making it happen, and Dinesh D'Souza. I remember seeing his videos like years ago, getting into conservatism, I guess, or just seeing Trump hit the scene. It got me on a path of education, call it, okay? And so I'd seen him around, mainstay conservative voice, maybe. I had known about him because he was, the story goes, I think, that he was politically persecuted by the Obama administration, maybe. I don't know. I think he has a movie about it. And so they debated over Iran. Is it America first, what Trump is doing? Should we be involved over there? And so instantly, you watch this thing. I know the first thing I learned is I don't know ish about ish. So, and these are two really smart guys. It was very informative. And I won't hash over too much. Let me move on from this. But there was one interesting moment. There was a lot of interesting moments. They're clearly two really smart guys. And I don't think you could come out of that saying that one was just totally wrong. It's like, what is this guy saying? It's totally when you get down to it, if you're able to follow some of it, I think if you're an honest person, you have to conclude that they really agree on like a lot, and then on these major details, they disagree. Like what if I had to summarize the two big smart guys I was listening to that I had to say knew way more about everything, they concluded what? That Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. That maybe America shouldn't regime change, but it would be nice to get rid of all of our enemies. Just not necessarily regime change, because that would be too costly for us. But yeah, no, totally. Let's get rid of all enemies. And or maybe, Dinesh was like, maybe there's a point here in being strong and totally destroying psycho enemies. And they debated on how insane Iran is truly and how much we should be involved and whose interest it really is to be involved. Is it Israel's or the United States? So fascinating. I just found that. What was that moment I was describing? I just wanted to say that it's. If I had to summarize, the smart guys agree on those things, and to me, it seems like a lot of the audience, the fanfare, the disagreement online, and the hype behind it is when it is really just lowbrow crowds. When it comes down to it, the details. For example, like. There was one point where Dinesh was describing. He was trying to say that that Fuentes was a Democrat. He tried calling him a Democrat. He's basically a Democrat. And the setup to this, I'm trying not to spend too much time on it. The setup to it was basically, well, they were settling some recent history in the region and even more older history. Dinesh coming at it from a standpoint of learning lessons from Reagan and being strong with your enemies and the lessons he learned over the years, Dinesh, from Democrats, from the Obamas, the lessons he learned were that being weak with your enemies, this idea that, we had this agreement with Iran, the JCPOA, and, they're not building a nuclear bomb. They're just having a nuclear latent ability because they're trying to defend themselves. And so Dinesh comes at it with this approach of these lessons of strength to not negotiate with enemies like that. And trying to describe how truly Iran is an enemy. And this is the setup. Fuentes trying to describe the hubris of Dinesh and his folk back in the Iraq War days, thinking that regime change would go a certain way, but it just didn't. And there was this moment where essentially they agreed that there is no material difference between Republicans and Democrats. And that was just a fascinating moment. They have the same security apparatus. When you look at Biden, Trump, Obama, Bush, they all kind of still maintain the same grand macro move of the enemies in Russia, the enemies in China, the enemies in Iran. So it was all quite interesting. That's really all I have to say. So let me just move on. It's not like I have much to say because I saw how much I didn't know. So, I'm trying to follow some of the politics here on this show for you. Do my best here. I think we're getting smart a little bit. It was maybe narrowing my scope a bit, going down with the bills. We were trying to talk about the bill and all that. But yeah, it's a big topic, and everybody's fighting online. I think with very little information, very low information. People fighting. Let me move on here a little bit. Another topic that a lot of people comment on, maybe with low information and so many conclusions are made, is this Diddy trial and this Diddy thing. And so the news is he's acquitted, found not guilty of racketeering and sex trafficking, but convicted of these lesser charges. And they're calling it a win. They're reporting Diddy and his team very happy to hear this result and getting, I think praying. I think they reported he prayed on his knees or something like that. But it was an emotional moment. They see it as a win clearly, and some say that he might be released as very soon. Some legal experts are saying that. He might be released, in fact, very soon. Despite these convictions of these lesser charges, there might be the possibility of bond and a number of things here. So it's a win. They're calling it a win. And to recap just a little bit, so understand some of these details, and then I'll tell you what it is that even interested me about the whole thing. Why are we saying free Diddy on the show? It's crazy, right? It's like, what? This guy's like some kind of rapist, no? It's the baby oil, Nick. It's like everybody's got this story now of him. And it's crazy because some of these details have come out like in court. And yeah, they had freak-offs. Yeah, the baby oil. Yeah, like, there was so-called domestic violence. And it is where it starts getting blurry. The words. So keep in mind some of these things as we go through this recap. Like back in November of last year, if you know anything about this guy, he's a rapper, okay? Made his fortune. They say he reached the pinnacle of the industry. I mean, you must know Puff Daddy, Sean Diddy Combs. You know him at least somewhat. And back in November last year, a civil lawsuit was opened against him by Cassie Ventura and a girlfriend. They called her ex-girlfriend, whatever. Just was definitely romantically involved for a long time with Sean Combs here. And she began this lawsuit. It was this bombshell civil lawsuit alleging all sorts of things: rape, physical abuse, drugging, forcing her into sex with other men. This is where the descriptions of the freak-offs started coming in, and the controlling her, surveilling her, etc. And all this to put together this case of coercion. But it was this civil lawsuit, right, between her and Diddy. So Diddy settled this case within 24 hours. And I see calls coming in. I'll get to all of you. 888-775-3773. He settled this case in 24 hours, and by then it was just too late. Okay, this hit the public. Diddy settles case, 24 hours. Oh, my God. So it looks guilty. And federal prosecutors get involved, okay? Turns out, and this probably happened within days. I'm no expert, but this probably happened real soon. They had been building a case, and this was sparked by Cassie Ventura and her civil lawsuit. She later became central to this with her testimony, and she became central to this massive case that alleged RICO, racketeering charges, sex trafficking charges against Sean Combs and the Diddy enterprise, okay? And the nature of these charges and all that is important. But basically, the verdict is you delivered on the third day of deliberations from a jury. They declared him not guilty of 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, but guilty of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. More on that in a bit. The verdict is seen as a win for Combs' his defense team, which did not call a witness during the 7-week trial. After the verdict was read, his family stood in the background clapping and cheering. Combs fell to his knees in prayer. As he left the courtroom, he told his family, "Thank you, love you." So, I guess here where we get into some of the count and how this can even come about in my mind. Because it's like, well, how did the government get involved? How did the federal government get involved? And on its most basic, without getting into conjecture, conspiracy, I think you can start with the most obvious conclusions and assumptions here. How attractive the details of Cassie Ventura's civil lawsuit were. I mean, we're talking about allegations of mere prostitution crossing state lines. Now that is, it piques the interest of feds. And it's because of this Mann Act, which is how these 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution came down on Diddy. It's under this thing called the Mann Act. And the threshold for this Mann Act, you got to understand, is simply that. It's the what's it called? What do they call it? The spirit or the core principle of the Mann Act is the transportation of people for illegal sex activities. Now, you start getting that threshold. I mean, a Fed is, hey, if we could get somebody on something, we'll do it. That's how the Feds do it. I mean, especially high cases like this. Now, I still wonder to myself, how did the government get involved in this besides, right, them just this piquing their interest after the civil lawsuit gets filed? And there's a lot of creative people on the internet saying it's like elites protecting themselves. This is Epstein, bro. And they sound so sure of when they say this. I don't want to sound like I know stuff that I don't. But I see this like a conspiracy channels, and he's all cool. He's got his mustache, and he's like, maybe I'm being too specific. And it's like, yeah, bro, it's just the Diddy stuff. And you'll just never know the names. You'll never know the names because that's what's important here. It's just a big conspiracy, bro. It's Epstein-level stuff. And the government, allegations of the government wanting to protect, the government / wealthy people protecting themselves. And so they go after the Epsteins, the Diddys, the ones who procure some of this stuff, a much lower level of this evil chain that you'll just never know about. And something about that bothers me because I really think it's a little shallow. I think that you can make a better attempt at explaining what's going on with the world here. And I'm no lawyer and all that, but allow me to lay this out. So here are the charges. Now, contrary to what some people are saying online, the feds did win in a sense here, right? They put forth 5 charges to Diddy here, and they were of RICO racketeering. So what is that? To reach the level of convicting someone for this, they have to do like these big crimes. This is how if I may crudely summarize, you got these big crimes like sex trafficking, drug dealing, but like across state lines. And these are like these big crimes that you could say organizations, enterprises could do, criminal enterprises. And it's hard to say the difference when an enterprise can be somewhat legal. It's a rap organization, whatever, a number of organizations. And so this is just a legal framework that lets the federal prosecutors deal with this kind of crime, this kind of criminal organization. So to get someone for this, they have to do like 2 or more of these big crimes, sex trafficking, something else, like coercion through violence and stuff like that, prostitution across state lines. And they have to be able to say that not only you do a number of these, but you did it like under an organization, etc. The counts of sex trafficking are other 2 are kind of with the RICO. Now, if you could prove the sex traffic, that would add to the RICO charge. Now, they weren't able to prove that either. They weren't able to say beyond a reasonable doubt that he coerced these women into doing things they didn't want to do at threats of violence or other things. And then the 2 counts the feds did get him on, the Mann Act, is interesting because the threshold for this depends on who you ask, but for an activist who cares about women, and women must be protected at all levels of society because men are so evil, and there's a moral panic of how they're in danger. Yeah, you would need the Mann Act. It's an important thing you need, but it's really, you got to understand what the Mann Act is. It's funny how they weren't able to get him on sex trafficking. And I was saying, this is why it was interesting to me. There's something, it wasn't about defending Diddy or defending people who get accused, any person who gets accused of wrongdoing, or a man, or assuming that because he's a man, that he did no wrong, or hatred of women or something. I just saw something so wrong about the world here. And this is the only reason I ever cared about this. It was never about defending stuff like this. It was just a sincere look at what looked like to me a dubious legal standard of such a thing like sex trafficking, to the point where they're able to bring a man with lots of money and connections, everything, before a court and threaten his life. You know, you're talking about a man's life before court. It's not a joke. It's not, we're just trying to prove a point. No, now it's close to being in prison for life and all that. And how easily the entire world is willing to go along with something. Okay? They call it sex trafficking, and these women, and it got to court, and and even in today's America, they were unable to prove it. And this it proves what I've been saying, the aspect that I cared about, which is, I'm no lawyer, but this sex trafficking stuff is dubious. These women are saying they were coerced and all that, but it's just like, do you need to be a lawyer to see that these women who claim to be abused, physically abused, they stay with the man? They stay with them. They have every ability to leave. They have a phone. I keep saying that, right? Like, to me, that proves you weren't sex trafficked. You have a phone in America where you could call 911 and you didn't do it. It's like crazy to me. And then the world just says, yeah, I mean, yeah, but Nick, that's just wrong. It's like, you can't, didn't you see the video of him hitting her? It's like, are we even having the same conversation? Who's saying that I'm okay with, that you should beat women? That was between them. And so I didn't need to be a lawyer to see all this insane world that marches along like, what do they call it? The emperor has no clothes, and nobody wants to say this person's naked. This society's messed up. And to add to this, allow me to describe this. The Mann Act. How did this even come around? What is this Mann Act? Turns out it's actually some more activism, some more legal activism made into law, and it's more the federal government getting involved and imposing this anti-order, anti-hierarchical, communist ideology. And if you allow me to explain this, I think you'll see what I mean. Take in this Mann Act. Let's start here with the Mann Act. So, apologies, hold on. Check out what it was called before. The Mann Act is also known as the White Slave Trafficked Act of 1910. It's a little federal law that makes it a crime to transport individuals across state lines for illegal sexual purposes. This was originally passed to combat what was called white slavery, a moral panic about women being coerced or trafficked into prostitution. But the language was broad, and over the years, it's been applied more widely. This might require some research of what was going on at the time. But knowing that they called it white slavery, so basically I'm gathering women came together, maybe some men or whatever, maybe a bunch of men, and they were like, yeah, you know these women, these female prostitutes and all that? That's basically white slavery. That's basically these women it's like, these women don't want to live like that. Am I adding to it a little bit? Look, it says here, the key provisions: knowingly transporting any person across state or national lines with the intent that such individual engage in prostitution or any sexual activity for which any person can be charged with a crime. See, this law criminalizes the transporter. And that's fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm not cool with, maybe they should be criminalized. I mean, they already are, aren't they? They clearly are. But the law also makes a bit of an assumption. And this is an old one. I'm not surprised that a society in 1910 would make such an assumption. This goes back to Eve, the so-called innocence of the woman in society, and in larger kind of like a macro society, okay? The so-called innocence of the woman. It kind of codifies that into law. It's saying the transporter is the main criminal here. Do you understand this? So if you look at it a certain way, this is kind of still activism, and it was only under this low threshold, in my opinion, that the government got so excited and involved in. Let me explain this a little further, kind of punching down even narrower from like the federal and the DOJ to the district court that put this forth, that filed this and all this. If you remember, I kind of talked about him a little bit. Damian Williams, he's the, let me get this correct. And I find this important, let me know if you find this interesting. I do find this interesting and important, especially the point I'm about to make. Damian here is part of this New York district. Hold on. SDNY. Oh, my notes are. So the assistant U.S. attorney, Damian Williams, convened with an indictment charging Sean Combs. It was under him, okay? And it was this New York district that put it forth. That's how the system works, okay? You have a number of federal district attorneys that can then, I mean, and they're all across the country, and it's supposed to be representative of the country. It fits the framing of the country. But what it's become, or whether our system allows it or what it's become, the point is, the system allows any attorney who, let me set it up how I see it in my mind. You have a district attorney. They're empowered by the Mann Act, which maybe normally they wouldn't have. But this precedent of activism, this precedent of protecting women empowers an attorney, a district attorney like Damian Williams. And now to be Damian Williams, you have to also, either sincerely or not, but you have to come at this believing the Mann Act and believing your jurisdiction here. And so that's how you start from Damian Williams and you get this federal case. But it's only possible because of this precedent of protecting women, this precedent of the Mann Act that was started by some moral panic over what they're calling white slavery. You know, that's a moral panic that refuses to acknowledge where the woman plays a part in this. This is how deep this worship, this worship of the woman goes. Okay, the activism of it all, and that puts so that's what I find so interesting about this. To summarize, I think this case is, if you lay it out, it's possible only because of this weak to the woman worship that has been really codified into law, and our system has empowered activists, attorneys to bring stuff up like this all the way to the federal court. And if you just listen to him, he really he believes in this coercion, that you could use these, and he knew the facts. You could use these words that these women were coerced, that you could really be Cassie and that other woman, and actually be coerced when it's like over years, and you could leave and you went back. And then when this gets to the actual court, so this gets to a jury, even in this America, they're like, well, she wasn't sex trafficked. All right, let's be real, folks. Okay, maybe the man. Let's look here. You're a jury. Okay, the Mann Act. Okay, beyond a reasonable doubt. Yeah, he brought these people over state lines, and they were doing illegal sex acts. Okay, under that, then yeah, I guess you got to get him. And that same jury wasn't able to say, but let's be real, Cassie wasn't sex trafficked. She wasn't sex trafficked, and this wasn't racketeering of a criminal enterprise. This was, people with money doing sordid things, and they all had their world together, and it all fell apart in a nasty way. And it's a lesson, too, in thinking you can build your own order, carve out your own order in the world. As Diddy, you're thinking, it's okay with this money and all this. I don't have to follow the rules, the rules of life, right? Oh, I can just surround myself with, false salvation, the sex, the ego, and that it would it would last and it would end up fine. I mean, that's in itself a lesson. So anyways, I'm looking at Damian a little bit, and I'm thinking this guy's like an activist. You seeing what I'm seeing here, folks? I'm thinking this guy's like an activist. I get this vibe.
Forced labor, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. As alleged in the indictment, to carry out this conduct, Sean Combs led and participated in a racketeering conspiracy that used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice. Let me say a little bit more about the charges. The indictment alleges that Combs abused and exploited women and other people for years, and in a variety of ways. As alleged, Combs used force threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs.
See? Physical? See, I'm trying to find smoking. This is like I didn't clip this down or anything. There's one right there. He believes in physical and emotional abuse. He believes that these women could be physically and emotionally abused into picking. Like, literally, let's be real. These women chose to be with Diddy. They chose, and they just went to a jury, and they said it's fine. They said, okay, come on, she wasn't sex trafficked. And the feds, in my opinion, knew that on the very least they would obviously get him on the Mann Act. That's why they even got involved in the first place. You know, with Cassie's thing, it's like, wait, hold on. This fits the Mann Act. We should get all over this. And if we could turn this into RICO, turn this into all that. It's like, yeah, why wouldn't they get involved? And people want to say the elites got here because they wanted to silence something. How about I think a better explanation, more clear and apt, is we live in this feminist upside down order world, and there are forces in the government, in the media, etc., that hate order, that hate this order of life, and how you can't get around it. You could be Diddy with money, and it's eventually going to fall apart. You can't go against the order of the world for long enough. It's toxic, and these evil anti-order communist forces, they hate this at spiritually, and so it's really, and we're seeing that. We're seeing that in the law. We're seeing that in the law with the Mann Act, in my opinion, activism that was trying to protect women, and you can't ever make law like that because it's already skewed from the get-go. When you make the law to protect women, you don't realize the evil actors that got in there to protect the evil women, and so it's all topsy-turvy, upside down. You see the vision here? That's how this happens. And then you get then our system basically allows this representation to happen with an activist attorney here, empowered by codified feminism in our law, to get in there and bring this to the feds. I mean, sure, you could say, oh, well, it's the conspiracy of this and that, but well, then give me the receipts. It's just so easy. They get all these clicks. It's a conspiracy theory. I got my mustache, and it's like, it's just elites, bro. It's just elites, bro. So what do you think about that? I think that's a better explanation. Anti-Christian, call it. And you guys have your thoughts on it already, but I'm telling you what I know, the threshold that I get it at. So what else about this? I think that was the summary I was looking for. Huh? It's just like elites, bro. But I think we could describe it a little bit. And it's whatever. What else about it? Now I'm just rambling. I got calls, 888-775-3773. Let me not move on too quick. This was kind of the main thing I had. What else did I have? Because I had some more interesting things. What else about this? Damien. Anti-order. They called it white slavery. We might have to learn a little bit more about the Mann Act here. And how that came around. This is 1910. 1910. I mean, were women being sex trafficked a bunch in 1910? Maybe, I don't know. I imagine prostitution was probably back then how it's been for a long time in the world. Sure, a violent world. Coercive, maybe. To the outside view, maybe. Like, I know, but women are deeply involved in this whole thing. Like, they're not innocent actors. They are involved even with their hell. Oh, she's just a young girl. She with no direction on the streets. She wouldn't have done this otherwise. She's forced to. We're all forced to in life. Nobody is that's how we all end up in the things we do in life. That's how everybody gets to doing what they do. No one's a victim of that. And yet we're innocent. But you're not this victim of society, and this victim has to be corrected. Some justice needs to happen. No, we all end up the way we all fall into the life we fall into. Like everybody does that. I think maybe even everybody has moments and chances to kind of go the other way. And it can happen young and all that. Anyways, 888-775-3773. We got Alex out of Tennessee. How you doing, sir? You're on the air.
I'm doing fine, man. How are you?
All is well. Go ahead, Alex. Thanks.
Nice. So I heard your show yesterday talking about the music thing and the gear hunt and all that. And let me know if I misunderstood, but from what I gathered, the sort of conclusion you arrived at was something to the nature of just preying on people's desire to keep seeking something different and never finding it, and that's kind of like that's sort of the scam, or was it that there actually was no difference in the sound between these things?
The scam is multi-layered. The scam initially with the amplifiers was the notion that there was this deep the discovery that the biggest factors in a amplifier's tone were simply a manufacturer's preset EQ and preset distortion. It is in itself its own scam. And that was kind of like the first scam there. Which is a bit of a mind blow. It's all these tubes, it's the circuitry, it's the construction, it's the cabinetry, it's all this, and the old Vox Fender, blah blah blah, is $7,000, and a pedal and a mere breadboard, which is a little homemade circuitry, with preloaded settings of famous amps. A little simple EQ and a little simple distortion could basically replicate all these tones. That was its own scam. So that was what I was saying was one thing. Kind of describing Jim Lill's video, and I linked it in the clip I made. Definitely, did you check out his video, Tested?
I watched a little bit of what you had posted there, but
I suggest you check his video out. It should be it's a mind blow, but you're trying not to what?
So I'm trying not to agree or disagree.
Fair enough. So that was the first thing on the amp. And go on.
Go ahead.
I just want to summarize so that you could understand what I was saying, because I may be long-winded yesterday and all that, but today I'm able to crystallize.
Go ahead and finish up what your
Here's the second part. There. Here's the second red pill. If you're looking at the stream of the video, maybe you'll see it later. My viewers are seeing the Akai Pro MPC 37 or whatever. This is like the latest little MPC drum box that Akai put out. Akai, and I think it's Akai who's been doing this for years. If anybody in music production knows the little MPC, famous little gear, and over the years has so-called evolved. But when you really take it in, when you really take it in, they haven't changed anything. They haven't changed anything. It's the same. If you look at the actual specs of the computer in it, it's an old computer. They haven't even bothered to make anything of it better. It's just the like recognition of this old MPC, and you're like, wow, I have 90s hip hop in my hands. It's like, no, you don't. That's just an illusion. You have all of audio peaked, audio synthesis and production peaked like 10 years ago, and it turns out you can make any sound or 90% of all the most amazing, most famous sounds with like your phone that you're probably watching the show with. And so that was the red pill. If I could, thanks for letting me summarize.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Now, on one hand, I would say that you're correct in that it's really about the person who's creating whatever it is that they're creating in terms of the musical performance or what have you, whether or not they can play their instrument well and they're inspired to do something with it, as opposed to just endlessly chasing after these things. On one hand, that's correct. On the other hand, I would say that the technology of today is not like the technology of the past in a lot of pretty significant ways that are. I'm not one of these people who buys into the notion that we can recreate things digitally in a perfect way. I think it is a virtual reality scenario when you start doing things in a digital way that gets you further and further away from something that at least resembles reality, whether or not it truly is. It gets more into a philosophical and religious questions, but the difference in the way sound is produced with a tube amplifier, which is very, very old electronic technology, as opposed to a digital sort of recreation of that sound. It's very different in the room, and that can affect someone's performance in terms of how inspired you can be to do whatever it is you do. If you have no frame of reference, like say you've never heard what this old equipment actually sounds like, you've never had the opportunity to spend time with it, and then go to whatever the digital modeled simulated equivalent is, it's hard to really describe what that is, but I think our sense perceptions go way past, 20K and 40 hertz to 20K kilohertz or whatever the human ear is supposed to perceive according to quote unquote scientists. I think our sense perceptions are far more profound and go much deeper than even these machines can measure. There's a feeling aspect to things that you get, and that can affect your performance and therefore the end result of the artwork itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like how it looks, looking cool and it seeming cool or whatever. That's the kind of a crude summary. That's not fair, but what am I trying to say here? Look, that's already a bit of a different thing than I'm saying. I mean, that digital can't reproduce everything analog does is a little bit different, because even if you stay in this realm of just these amplifiers, we're not even comparing digital here in the main argument. Now, I say yeah, because of what, and I think you got to watch that video with Jim Lill. He really methodically goes through in a very basic way some of the main things of all these amplifiers, and still at the end producing an analog amplified signal without going digital or anything. He's able to recreate all these tones. So already, even if analog has some sort of warmth and special thing to it, between the manufacturing of all these different analog systems, there was no difference. That there's something very the only EQ. So the reason the amp sounded different is because the EQs all EQ'd differently. They didn't even all EQ exactly the same. Manufacturers set their own EQ curve, their own proprietary EQ curve that over the years enthusiasts have been able to reverse engineer, and they have it all online. And these amps, he was able to get totally different amps, famous amps, find this neutral point using the EQ parameters the enthusiasts have found, and he makes all these amps sound the same. So the implication of what builds tone being only EQ and distortion, and then the manufacturers kind of sending it their own way, it's like that was the bombshell of the industry, in my opinion, right? This was just 2 years ago. That video was. And so for me, you know, seeing that, that's the lesson. That's what I got out of it. You know, you're saying that, okay, despite all that, you can get something creative or whatever, there's something that still adds. Having this piece of gear and all that can add to your performance. And that's what you're saying, right?
Right. Which can affect the quality of your whatever artwork, you know, musical artwork, say, and this what we're describing currently, whatever that is. Like, there is a difference. For instance, like I've had the fortune of being able to experience a lot of these things and listen to them in real life. The sort of holy grail items that people seek for, and also a lot of these modelers and all these kinds of things. And the trouble that I've come across with that is that you can have these things, they don't carry through the air the same way. Like, they might sound fine in a YouTube video, but in the room, in the air, when it's interacting with real, you know, God-made life as opposed to man-made virtual existence on the internet, it does not translate the same way. There is a sense perception.
That's a fine separate thing. I don't know. We're not arguing that analog doesn't have its use case. Some might say, well, what's the big difference? If you ask me, it's practically no different, and all this gear is useless. And that's maybe kind of a further argument. Maybe what you're saying is, like, in a live setting, you just can't beat analog. And I don't know if I would argue against that. I don't know if I would argue against that. I don't know if I know. So I wouldn't. I'll say no. Yeah. I'm not going to argue against that.
But
imagine this
like
for a moment. If you could build an amplifier out of a fishing tackle box like Jim did in his video, and you're able to make that amp sound like the most famous amps, and yeah, you still pump out an analog sound for your live setting to fit the use case that you're saying. Isn't that kind of a mind-blowing detail? It's like, wow, I don't have to buy all these amplifiers. I just kind of have to
I think it
tone
depends on
correctly and learn how to shape tone, which is where to put the EQ and the distortion, where in the chain, and then how. It's just gain, man. All these different tones of these amps is just gain. Isn't that mind-blowing?
I wish it was that simple, but it's really not. It's and you don't know too.
Okay, maybe I'm just wrong about that. Okay, well.
You don't know if this guy's being deceptive as well.
Fair enough.
In terms of his representation, in order to, and this is an interesting thing. This kind of ties into what you were talking about earlier with the Diddy stuff. Is that people love confirmation bias. If they have a suspicion in their head about something, and an idea that they've kind of latched onto about, and then someone presents an argument that confirms that idea, that oftentimes they can't wait to go along with it, and it's an interesting thing because, you know, people will join the bandwagon, no pun intended, to kind of go along with something that may be factually or incorrect, but because it helps them confirm, the next thing you know, you got like a whole bunch of people repeating the same thing when it's not accurate.
What's the last sorry.
Go ahead.
When's the last analog sound you heard?
Oh, just about maybe 5 minutes ago.
Oh, you like
I'm an instrument repairman is what I do.
Cool.
For a living. So I spend a lot of time with a lot of various things of this nature,
But I'm not even talking about all that. You realize. Just imagine this for a moment. If you could 99%, 95%, 90%, whatever, achieve a tone in all these ways, and this fits to what you're saying about creativity. You're saying, oh, but it just might add to your creativity. I think that's actually anti-design, anti-human design, anti-creativity. Because if people just knew that it's the keys on the OP1 are membrane, just like this laptop, maybe they'd start right now. Creativity is about just seeing something somebody else hasn't seen yet. That's all it is. If you could just do it right now, if you just knew that what's a TAL noisemaker is as powerful of a synth engine than any synth from the last 20 years, right? Then maybe would people? It's just I found that like a cool little a cool little turn something on its head type of moment type of thing.
Well,
when you realize all this is marketing.
Well, one last point. Not all of it. I think some of it is. I mean, there is marketing, of course, but I think some of it. The Akai
MPC is the same damn thing. It's a really crappy computer shoved in a box that they haven't bothered to change the design of.
And that may be true. But a lot of that music, a lot of that amazing music from the 80s and 90s that were done on these early digital platforms, they do sound amazing. And they do sound really good but that was one of the last eras of innovation in musical instrument technology. And this is
so they stopped. So you agree with me?
Well, the computer kind of shut down innovation in musical ingenuity, because then it just became simulating, replicating, imitating things that had come before, including analog things, and
that's human nature, man. That's why I find this interesting. We're a stuck culture, and we always clamor for the errors of the previous age. It's like, but I want the real filters and pops of the vinyl. Just use the RC20 plugin, man. And I guess you'll disagree. That's where we'll disagree, because you'll be like, well, it's not analog, it's not real, but look,
I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm not going to disagree with you.
Right? We're just clamoring for the errors of the previous age. These are all just recording errors.
Not necessarily. I think they have. So the last point I wanted to make about it is that I don't necessarily disagree or agree with this, with whatever it is that we've got nowadays. It is what it is.
Fair enough.
I don't necessarily like the way it's being applied, in that it's all this rehashing of old stuff that has been done before, and frankly done better, because it is the real thing. When you're playing through a real vintage tube amp, there is a difference in the sense perception you receive from that versus a digital model of it, and that translates in innumerable ways, which I don't have time to get into. But but there's tools. I don't begrudge these tools that people have, these digital tools that you can pull up on your phone or your computer or whatever, because they do have uses, and they are useful things to have on hand. But at a certain point, they reach a limit, because essentially what they are is an imitation of somebody's idea of what that thing was. It's not your own personal experience with it. And so the amount of creative potential does hit a wall. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of music has kind of peaked, because innovation in instrument technology kind of stopped around the early 90s. And it has not really grown since then. When's the last time anybody came up with a new instrument? I mean, the synthesizer.
But what you're saying doesn't even make sense,
was one of the last new instruments.
But you're describing this. This world of this world that's full of such rich analog sounds that's slowly being taken over by. It's like, what are you talking about? Everything recorded. Everything analog is recorded. You have not heard anything analog in your life unless you turn on your amp and play your guitar, but that gets recorded on a CD, it gets recorded on MP3. It's all
and it survives.
Digital.
It survives that compression and that transfer. It actually does survive that. Whereas if you were to record, like say, if you were trying to re-record Led Zeppelin with all digital modeling and then put it digital, it is not going to sound like Led Zeppelin. I 100% guarantee you that. And that's because it was all done analog onto tape, magnetic tape, which is all a molecular thing. You're talking about molecules that are.
It's like but to you, there's no difference.
To me,
there's no material difference for you if a change in molecular aberration of a sound wave is a 1 and a 0 versus like physical height in a vinyl record.
absolutely is. There absolutely is. And you can perceive it even though you may not be able to describe it. And this goes back to the sense perceptions, that there are we have a much more sensitive perception of things
no,
that
but
are
we
coming
can
at us.
endlessly go on. That's why I like this one too, because I knew it would get kind of people going, but it's not even that deep. But we can endlessly go on this, man. You know.
Yeah, that was nice talking to you, man.
Yes, sir. Call me again.
Okay, bye-bye.
Imagine if the industry knew that we knew. Put it like that. It's like, if you know it, I'm not saying analog, digital totally recreates analog. That was a small, tiny implication. And the implication is enough for my wallet, if you ask me. You know, it's like, wow, you know what? I'm happy with a free IR profile, and maybe one day I'll buy a tube amp. So it was really, the distinction was enough for my wallet. But consider the mind blow of the industry. Imagine if they knew we knew that it's just an old computer. Imagine what they would make. But they'll never do it because the musicians are a bunch of little people who like toys. It's like, buy a weighted keyboard and get your chops up and really learn. Buy a, you know, but it's like toys. It's toys. Okay. Aaron, Maryland, go ahead. On the air.
Hey, what's going on, Nick? How are you?
What's up, Aaron? Go ahead.
Hey, I'm talking about the same thing you guys were just talking about, man.
Yeah,
I have an interesting, I see this from all sides. I used to be an audio engineer.
Oh, cool.
So I used to work. Yeah, so I used to work. I had the pleasure of listening. Frame of reference is everything. I had the pleasure of listening to a lot of things on very high quality monitors, rather. So like Sony's, Adams, you got freaking KRKs, and that's a huge factor. But what you're talking about is the truth. All that stuff is out the window because what you're going to mix and master for is what everybody's going to listen to it on. So you're going to mix and master for AirPods. You're going to mix and master for car speakers of that generation. And it is what it is. People really don't care that much for that quality of a sound. So you're right in what you're saying, that they do sound good enough for people to compare. And those two devices you were mentioning, the Fender amps.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so totally. For the average consumer, that's just business. So they're not gonna care. They're not gonna hear the difference. They're not trained to hear the difference. So for them, it's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sale. That's it. You know what I mean? But
I can agree with that.
Yeah, I can see also the scam part of all of it because at a certain price range, you're really just losing money unless you go past 1,000. You really, it's just to make you feel better. But like, dude, I've made wonderful music off of like a Rode NT1A, like $100 microphone. You can get $100 complete set with a mic and an interface, and you can pump out great music, even with the guitar in there. You don't even need like a separate amp. You can use the amp that comes with the interface.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, just direct into the interface.
Totally. And you can make some amazing music that will pass for a commercial. 100% on a cheap laptop. It's not that big of a deal. On the other side, as an audiophile, and I don't know, audiophile sounds weird. As someone that I enjoy the peak of anything, whatever you can get to, the best of it. That's great. And for sound, you can't beat. Like my favorite is an Avalon 737 preamp. You just can't beat it, man. I've been in the studio with that thing. I've had a couple other amps, and you can also use that for guitar, by the way. But I think you mean more like that speaker amp what you were referencing, like the one you have a speaker, a cabinet or whatever, right?
You have an Avalon 737?
No, I used to. That was my main suggestion for any studio I worked in. I would tell them, you need an Avalon 737, let's get it. And then the mic combo that I would go with is the U87, Neumann U87. And it just, with that combo, it was just anybody could step up to the mic and I wouldn't even have to touch it on the audio processing side, really. And it just came out like butter. It was smooth. It's amazing. You know what I mean? And
I got you.
That's just something you can't beat. Also, when it comes to mixing and mastering, if you're not that talented, or not talented, that's a dumb thing to say. But if you're not that experienced, then having top tier equipment kind of reduces the amount of work you have to do to fit things in, eliminating static noise and all this other BS. It just makes it easier. But no, you're totally right in terms of the scam side. And this day and age, for the music that people are producing, for the average listener, you don't need any of that stuff at all. 0%.
Put it like this, because I basically understand what you're saying and don't disagree, and the intricacies of the peak of a sound and all that, and having a trained ear to even hear some of this. It's
right.
This is where it interests me, because you're telling me about this Avalon preamp.
Yeah.
If I was an audio engineer and I saw this video, I would at the very least, want to grab this Avalon preamp and grab another similarly, I forget how the guy did it in the video, but something similar to his test. Grab another similarly rated whatever a preamp that multiplies at a different factor. And then I would want to just increase the gain knob on the other one and see if I could arrive to at least a similar tone, because what? That would have then, I would want to test that for myself, because it's like, wow, I've been an audio engineer 100%. For years and I saw this video and they're saying these claims. If I could make this preamp sound pretty darn close to this amp, I mean, I would want to test that. I want to kind of like find out and be like, okay, well, yeah, the Avalon is great, but probably for a very much minor reason than anybody thinks.
Totally. Well, I mean, the biggest thing with the Avalon is its compressor, because with its compressor, I mean, I understand you do the same thing anyway. Okay, whatever, the compressor, compare it with another one, deal with that on there. But yeah, that's the biggest factor to the Avalon 737 is the slight distortion that you get when you're using the compressor on that thing. That's all, but I still understand what you're saying. And I would be interested in that.
And
the
so,
thing is, again,
I'd want to test that. If you have any stuff,
totally.
Hey, chat, who's got gear? We should test this. We need amplifiers.
Totally.
We got to get together and do a test. Find out for ourselves.
You probably have to just keep that amp and then have a constant whatever. So same guitar, same plug.
We'll have to come together we have to come together and like come up with like a testing methodology that we'll all be happy with.
Totally, yeah. But yeah, I wanted to call in. I love that you were talking about that. I wanted to call in and mention that. And I didn't agree or disagree with anything you're saying.
Yeah, fair enough.
I see both perspectives. That's all.
Nice. Right on, Aaron. Right, appreciate your call.
Yep. No problem. Thank you.
888-775-3773. Let's see here. Hold on, folks. We're going to get back to calls here. Going to get right to you here. Thank you so much for the support, everybody. Okay. Some amazing supporters here. We'll leave it at that. Thanks for the generosity. All right. Let's get to William out of California. How you doing, sir? You're on the air.
Hey, Nicholas.
Hey.
What's going on?
All is well.
I like your conversation about the music and everything. You know, I'm not I play, but I don't play like
you're a performer, not an engineer or circuitry guy.
No, I just play the drums. I don't have all that. I don't have a lot of equipment. I got a pretty good monitor. I got a Elisa's set, but I don't play it. I'm not a professional, so I don't buy all the extra pieces like you were talking about, the toys and gear. Very interesting. Yep. You know, even if you're not into it, it's interesting. But,
nice. I'm glad.
The only people that would know the difference in those sounds are people like you and some of these callers that are calling in, like engineers and stuff like that. They know the difference. And you have another, like you said, you don't, for the sound that they're trying to get today for the listener and the equipment that they're putting the music through, they don't need all of this hype, the quality. They don't really need it because they're not, the listener's not looking for it anyway. As far as you were talking about tubes and things like that, and I guess I could say I'm lucky enough that I've seen Jimi Hendrix play in the Golden Gate Park in San Francisco when I was a child. And there was a big difference in sound back then, but I didn't know anything about that then. But, when you get to grow up and you be a teenager and you start playing records and buying records and stereo equipment, there's a big difference. There's a really, really big difference And I guess you can say that maybe those people back then, Hendrix and all of those guys, they were inventing this stuff, so it does sound different.
That's right. That's why they had all those different amps.
A lot. It just sounds a lot different. Like this guy just said, you can't really copy that digitally. It's not going to come out the same because those players played from the field, and the equipment was a lot different. And so you can imagine a live concert in the 70s. Can you imagine? Those are different sound.
I remember I saw Justice, which is like a French electro group, actually. But I saw them live, and they had, I don't know if I'd ever seen that before or ever since. They had a wall, in the rock world, right, they had your stack, right? Your stack is like your amp combo, right? The amp and the speakers. Right. You maybe had a double stack of speakers. You had a double stack, whatever, your stack. But, the sick rock bands, the ones who made it big, they filled the whole stage with a giant amp stack, right? And that was kind of a classic thing. I did see Justice do that back in the day.
I've seen a lot of it.
A big wall, and their whole set, the sound. Because sometimes you do a live show, you'll plug your equipment into the stage's PA system. It'll come out of their speakers and all that. The mixer amplifies it, but Justice did it the classic kind of rock star way. They had a wall of amplifiers pushing the sound of the show.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. I mean, even like I have a pretty big collection of vinyl. Even that, and especially if you use a older unit like a Marantz Pioneer, Macintosh, Quadriflex, or anything, those. Because I think the best stereos were probably between 70 and 80. They had a stereo war, and even if you take your vinyl and use it with that older equipment and put on a CD, same music, same song, the digital is more convenient, but it's just not the same. It's just not the same.
Nice. A little music there, music jargon there for you folks.
Well, you felt like me playing drums. I was listening for all the time, all my life, just listening for other things that maybe somebody sitting next to me is not listening for. And that's the difference right there, like CDs versus vinyl. Big difference in sound. I think the vinyl sounds much fuller than the CD. It's fat. Well, what was that called? You guys in music, they say it's fatter. It's fat.
Fatter. You gotta love the music engineering buzzwords, and I say that lovingly because I kind of agree with them. I think I understand what they're saying there, but they'll describe sounds all sorts of ways. Bright.
And I don't even think you're right.
Mid-tone.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not making fun of it. I get it. But it is, you gotta love it.
I don't even think the engineers are the same. I don't even think the engineers are the same as those guys back then either. The people that mix the albums and wash them off before they put it on the market. The people that, those mix guys, I don't think they're the same. I mean, they're probably a lot older now too. And they kind of know what they're looking for. But our market is not even looking for that sound right now. There's a lot of people that are younger that don't even know that sound. You do. Some of these callers.
I wouldn't say that's a mystery to me. Like people who actually engineer sound and tone. So I'll say that. I'll say that.
I mean, they used to have Grammy awards for the engineers would get a Grammy too. They had awards for them too because it was just so many, especially like down there in LA. We had so many engineers, good ones, like people that engineered Steely Dan's albums. And, I guess those people are probably 80 years old now, but it was a different thing. It was a whole different thing back then.
We don't know how to recreate it. We lost the technology. We lost the knowledge, kind of like going to the moon or the aqueducts. I don't know if we can make those albums anymore.
You remember how tricked out people And he was a great musician on a guitar. Prince was a good musician on a guitar. I remember somebody in the 80s telling me, hey, man, it's like Hendrix Williams. You got to check it out. I'm like, okay, let me listen. It's good, but it ain't Jimmy. Because Prince had a lot more. He had a lot more equipment, a little bit higher tech, a few more tricks. You know how to play the guitar. You know what I'm talking about. It was a lot more things available at Prince's disposal versus Hendrix. But Prince similarly was not. His sound was not like those guys back then, Clapton. It was just a lot different, man. You know. Don't you agree? I think it is.
That's amazing, man. It's a little bit of music history there too.
Yeah, James Hake ought to be ashamed of himself. It is Thomas Sowell's birthday, and nobody said nothing about it.
Is it actually?
Yeah. He's getting up there, ain't he?
His birthday's in White History Month. That's cool. Thomas Sowell.
Yeah, the black man that would not be afraid of putting you another black in their place.
Oh, no, wait.
Feel nothing.
His birthday
He would not feel nothing about it. He wouldn't feel nothing. He's just like Jesse. He wouldn't feel nothing about it. He don't care nothing about your feelings.
I always got that impression, too.
Mm-hmm. You know, he just doesn't care. I've been following him since I was a teenager and everything. Maybe that's my attitude comes from some of that because, you know, a lot of the things that we are having a fit about even today are just, it's just not there. You guys just want to be upset about these things. How's your
terrible, William? Yeah. Well, shout out to him. I didn't know that. Nice. Happy birthday to him.
Yeah, happy birthday, Thomas Sowell. Yeah. What are you doing musically?
I mean, the same. We're just doing the shows and doing what we got to do. Hopefully a restful weekend and all that. William, appreciate your call, man. Can you call me again?
All right. Yeah, and shout out to these drummers and people who know about this stuff that's calling in. Thanks for the information.
Yeah, beautiful. Good time. 888-775-3773. Let's see here. I had a few more things for you. And then we'll do all the super chats and coffees and all that to finish off here. But, yeah, you ever heard of a Copepod? Copepod. Little Copepod. Yep. It's a little, I think it's a crustacean. Huh?
Thanks to Skillshare for supporting this episode of Journey to the Microcosmos. The first 1,000 people to click the link in the description can organisms churn in sunlight and eating each other. At the start, you have the photosynthetic organisms churn in sunlight into sugar, and everything just cascades into culinary chaos from there.
Copepods, little tiny organisms.
Rotifers and fish and everything else that comes after. And somewhere reigning comfortable from its spot in the middle of all of this is the copepod.
Oh, I knew I was saying that wrong. It's not a copepod. Is this chat? Is this cope?
At first glance, the copepod probably doesn't seem any more significant than any other animal. I mean, it looks a little strange, but crustaceans usually do. There are more than 20,000 species of copepods in the world, and these various species have managed to find their way into just about every type of water, no matter the temperature or the salinity. There are species in freshwater ponds, species in oceans, and species deep in hydrothermal vents. And just as they've managed to find so many different places to live, so have they found many different ways to live. Some swim.
Is this stuff in all of our water? You know, I was hearing about this stuff being in New York City tap water, and that it's beneficial. You know, so relax. The Harris Water Main and Sewers website of New York lets us know. I don't live in New York. You know, they let us know about the role of copepods in New York's water system. You know, they make it clear they're beneficial. Okay, they're important to be in the water. Okay, they're important there. They aren't harmful to humans. They're too small and harmless. So city authorities don't filter them out because their presence indicates good water quality and ecological balance. You got to let the water just kind of be natural. You can't be digitally recreating it and removing all of its things that you don't even realize are good. Maybe. I don't know. But there's bugs in the water, okay? Maybe not bugs. The crustaceans, right? A copepod. Tiny crustacean. What's a crustacean but a exoskeleton insect? No? From the sea. A sea bug? Hey, whatever. I'm just a guy drawing lines and parallels where they probably shouldn't be. A scientist might not do it. Some guy with a podcast might. Don't take everything I say with a grain of salt. Okay? But yeah, there's bugs in the water. There's bugs in the water. Is this in all the water? Or is it just bodies of water over there in that side of the country? Because they are apparently naturally occurring in reservoir ecosystems. New York City draws water deep from these ecosystems unfiltered. Does LA water have copepods? Is that why it's all... Yes, Los Angeles tap water also contains copepods, tiny crustaceans found in many surface water sources. What would happen if you filtered them out? Like, would you just have like a little filter full of tiny crustaceans? It's not kosher, apparently. Meet the tiny crustaceans, not kosher, in your tap water. So, I don't know. Fun fact, I guess. Fun little factoid. Yeah, we did. Can you tell we did all the important topics? We did all the important topics here. Okay. Can you tell? There's bugs in the water. This is definitely not the segment for someone not working on overcoming the insanity of your mind. This is actually probably very negative for you. I suggest Jesse Lee Peterson's Silent Prayer. www.silentprayer.video, right? No, we're not doing that anymore. Rebuildingaman.com/prayer. That one's good. That one's good. At least that one. Rebuildingtheman.com/prayer. Yeah, I suggest Jesse Lee Peterson's Silent Prayer. Robert, Kansas, you're on the air.
Hey, Nick, you said I could call you back about the topic, right?
Hit me. What are you talking about?
Oh, hit you right now. Hey, I was going to wonder, I was asking you one question real quick. Were you a part of the GATE program, like in school at some point? Did they put you in the gifted and talented program?
No.
No, you never did?
No, I wasn't in the program. I kind of remember I kind of remember at some point doing some sort of test and my mom asking me if I wanted to go off to this school or this program or whatever. And I said no, I didn't want to be different. So I don't know if they were going to send me off to gifted or retarded. I can't tell you, but.
Well, no, that's funny you say that because when I was in elementary school, they were saying that I was retarded, right? So they were saying that. And then I get to middle school and they're saying, well, he's a genius. And it's like, do these people even know what they're talking about? I mean, what is it? But yeah, I don't know what quadrant I finally fell in, but it wasn't a good one. So I wanted to talk about an actual scripture. And I guess my topic here would be the law, the truth, and the word, right? So how we, Hake likes to talk about the law a lot and how we need the law. And then how this comes through into reality, basically. And it's called the ministers of God, or the ministers of truth, the ministers of the word. And what this Baptist preacher went through a sermon that I was fortunate enough to hear. And I won't take all day with you, Nick, unless you have questions. But really, he ranked where the law is in terms of what God would rank the law as, or the truth, or who actually decides something. So at the lowest rank, it was what we would call today politicians, lawmakers, people who write the law. We have, whoever you can imagine in the legislation or even, other branches too. So the law would be judged by judges, right? And it would be executed by the executive. Or you see what I'm saying? So it's the law.
And this is described in the Bible.
Yeah, by the government. So this is Romans saying how the law and how it works. So the lowest rank is lawmakers. The next rank up is what we would call today police, right? But in ancient times, there was all different kinds of policing that today it's more like you recognize them in their uniforms. We respect them. We follow the law, right? So if you write a law that I can only go 20 miles an hour and I'm going 120, if there's no one to enforce it, then there's no one to enforce it, right? So the police officer is above the politician in terms of how do you exact the law into reality, right? So if there's a police officer sitting on the hill and it says 55, and me and you see him, Nick, guess how fast we're going to be going, right?
Mm.
So that police officer is different than like Nancy Pelosi just yelling at you from the side of the road to slow down, right? You see how he's above her?
I guess.
And then
in a certain respect.
Well, in the respect of enforcing the law.
Yes,
right?
that's his jurisdiction.
Law enforcement. Yeah. You see how Nancy Pelosi can't do anything. She can write on a piece of paper, but what can she do to you if you're going 120 in a school zone?
All she can do is refer to the law, the cops.
She will ask the police, please, police officer, do something. You see? Now, the third rank, the highest rank, right? I don't know if you understand where I'm going. You want to guess?
But I'm following at least to see if you can make your point here. But okay, yeah, Romans describes this hierarchy of ministers, and I'll have it open right here about being subject to governing authorities. But you go on with your the third level of ministry here.
The highest level of ministry, do you want to guess or you want me to tell you?
Go ahead, tell me.
It's the military. Okay?
Okay.
The military, like if you've ever seen something called the 4th Cavalry, right? If they show up to your house, right? The law enforcement will not. The police will probably not. If the 4th Cavalry shows up with a bullhorn and says, leave the property or there's a tank round coming through your front door. You see, the ultimate law would be those B-2 bombers on the Iranian plants or whatever. The people who just say, you're going to do exactly what I tell you to do, or I will blow up your entire quadrant. You see, that's the ultimate law, is the military, and that's what Romans describe. The warrior, right? The warrior protects everybody. You could be a police officer, you could be a politician, you could be an anchor baby, right? So the ultimate law are the men who lay down the law. You see? And
I don't read any of this in this Romans 13.
Romans 13. I'm not even saying where it is in Romans. I'm saying that he said his sermon was derived from Romans in terms of how God describes the hierarchy of the ministers of truth, the ministers of the law, and that if if the military comes upon you, right, it's the ultimate force on earth. It's not like a cop knocking at your door. It's not like Nancy Pelosi writing a bill in California. You see, there's a hierarchy of the ministers of God. That's what they called it, the ministers of God, the ministers of the law, the ministers of truth, the word. It doesn't matter. It means everything, but that's why we have a military.
But yeah, I just don't know where you're getting all this this delineation of the military
and the police and lawmakers.
And the police and all that. I don't know if that's anywhere in Romans.
Well, no. I don't know.
I don't think any of that is any. I think maybe I think so far what you said, maybe like 5% of what you said is in Romans.
So would you rather face the 4th Cavalry or Nancy Pelosi?
I don't know. The 4th Cavalry. You
Like
said the
if you
4th
were in
Cavalry. Is that in the Bible?
No. If you were walking down the street and Nancy Pelosi's walking by, would you rather fight her or
I think I could take Nancy Pelosi.
the U.S. Army?
Yeah, I think I could take Nancy.
Okay, so do you see how? I don't know if you are picking it up. I thought you weren't in gate, right? So dang it.
Oh well.
Okay.
I mean, I definitely attempted to engage, but put it like this: you're describing what? I mean, what that force governs the world. I mean, have you said anything besides that? You haven't said really much besides that. Is this anything to trip about or get excited about? Like, is force at the core?
I did my best. Nick, to try and tell you what I'm trying to say, but like, just how it said there's lawmakers, right? It's about the law, like how what you think the law is. Like when a police officer says you're going too fast. Well, somebody wrote that you got to go this speed, and then somebody else enforces it. The person that enforces the law is above the person who writes the law.
So what's your point or question or comment?
It was just a lesson that I wanted you guys to have.
Right on. That we think the policymaker like Nancy Pelosi is above the law, but actually she's not as powerful as a cop, is what you're saying.
Well, no, but in Romans, it will say that let's call him a politician for modern speak. It will say that the politicians are revered. They make the laws. You see, but it was describing an inverse structure. Like you think of Satan's structure, right? You think in terms of money and sex and all the other sin, right? So when you see politicians making more money compared to a soldier, you are inverted in your satanic way, right? Where you are in your sin. You think money is some sort of anything but what Jesus said it was. You know, so it is something that if you don't understand it, you don't. I guarantee you, if the 4th Cavalry
don't, Robert. Sorry, man. Hey,
no,
appreciate
you're
your
going
call,
to wish
though.
it was a police officer. You see what I'm saying? You're going to wish you had a police officer if it's the military. You rather deal. Hey, police officer, how are you, sir? I comply with everything. Take me to jail. If you have the military show up and they say, if and they just blow up your building, well then, do you see
Right,
the
they
difference?
definitely supersede any previous conception of hierarchies. I mean, guns and bombs really do papers and titles are nothing in the face of guns and bombs. Appreciate your call, Robert. Thank you, man. Let's see here, folks. We got to do these super chats, and we got to go. We got to do the super chat. Oh, we got another call here, 888-775-3773. We'll get to that call. In fact, we'll do the call, super chats, and all that, and then we got to go because we have a whole bunch of support here that we should get through here on this fine Wednesday. Let's see here. Okay. Hold on for me, folks. Appreciate your call, Robert. Oh, thank you, Hake. Let's see here. 888-775-3773. Lord. When you need something, hold on here. So let me see. Yeah, did anybody get that from Romans? I've read this one before a little bit. I mean, it's interesting in the things it makes me think about, but that's pretty much it. It's just what? I wonder about that. You know, it's the whole thing about let everyone be subject to governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Like, what does that? I've read that one a few times. Does that mean our politicians were established by God? I don't know if that's exactly what it means. I've always kind of taken it as the world is kind of set up. A large part of the world and people it's already decided and set up before you, well before you were even born. So many of the things you so-called decide and like were already decided before you were, maybe even the moment you were born, including what family you were born into and what you might even get bred for. They call them the families where wealth and power has coalesced is not out of randomness. And so that's how I've always taken that, as an acceptance of how the world is ordered, this hierarchy and order in the world that sometimes churns and things happen and change. But there are, for example, there are those charged with maintaining nuclear parity, I think they call it, in the world. There are those who have to make those decisions whether nuclear arms should be proliferated here or there or not. There's an argument to be made that I shouldn't worry my pretty little head about it, in a sense. For this hierarchy was established. You know, those who are charged with worrying about the nukes, I'm glad we have them. That's their job. And I think they'll do a good job at it, at least their best, because they are worried about nukes. You know what I'm saying here? And it's for that reason they have the keys to this sort of rulerdom, this kingship, whatever. So I don't know exactly what this all means, Romans. Established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted. And those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will be commended. Yeah, it doesn't even say ministers of God in any of this, or any of that. Phil, Tennessee, you're on the air.
Hey, what's up, little brother? How you doing?
All is well, Phil. Appreciate your call.
Oh, no problem, man. Man, you play guitar?
I dabble. Terribly. Let's say yes. Terribly.
Man, I heard you talking a lot about, amps and voltage earlier.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you had some skills, dude.
I have some chops. I got a little chops. I can get down on
Why they call you
I can totally improvise on a 4-5-1 off the top of my head.
Oh yeah? What's your favorite chords?
Favorite chord? What kind of question is that? How about all the 11th chords, all of them.
Probably like
call me a little
A
jazzy.
and a G.
What is materially different between them but a Hertz audio range?
They all make great songs.
A D major chord is only different from a C major by a couple hundred hertz. You know, they still have the same spirit.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
they're a major chord. So I don't know. That's a silly question. A favorite chord, it can't be a D.
They all there on the third fret, dude.
I think it's better. What's your favorite quality of chord? Major, minor, dominant, seventh? You'd play guitar? You a performer?
Yeah, dude, I play hardcore, man. I've been playing it since I was 12 years old, man. I started early.
Nice, man. Yeah, that's good. So you've been...
you ever listen to hardcore, man?
Yeah, for sure.
What's your favorite band?
Favorite hardcore? What was I listening to recently? Is Circle Jerks hardcore? Or is that just kind of like straight up like
Circle Jerks? That sounds like a whack off.
No, it's a band. They got some history. It's like a punk band. It's more punk, right? I don't know. What was I listening to that's hardcore? What was I listening to that's hardcore, huh? I don't know if I've listened to any hardcore recently, but I was listening to some Drive Like Jehu.
Drive by Jason.
Drive Like Jehu. You familiar with Drive Like Jehu?
I never heard of them.
California hardcore band.
Never heard of them, man. But I'll check them out, man.
That's like I think that's definitely a hardcore staple you got to check out.
Yeah, man. Now, yo, bro. How'd you get your nickname?
Anchor Baby?
Yeah, why they call you that?
Because I'm an anchor baby.
So why do they call you that?
Because I'm an anchor baby. It's a good nickname. I informed. I remember back in the day, starting with Jesse, I informed. It just stuck. I don't know. It just stuck. I said I was an anchor baby, and it just stuck. It's just a factual statement. It just describes how I was born in America as an anchor baby.
Well, every nickname has a passage of rights. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it just kind of stuck.
Yeah, well, yeah, dude, you too old to be looking. I mean, like, for real, dude, you don't look like no baby to me, man.
Wait, are you saying? Wait, hold on. Are you saying I'm too old to call myself a baby?
Maybe you should be an anchor man.
Are you saying I'm a little too old to call myself a baby?
Yeah.
Is that basically what you're saying? You might be onto something.
Yeah, dude. Tell Jesse you need a promotion. Say, I'm not no anchor baby. I'm an anchor man.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. You might be onto something, man. I'm a little too old to call myself a baby.
Yeah, I mean, for real, dude. Come on now.
It's just
look in the mirror.
No, you have a good point.
You ain't no
man.
baby.
Kind of got a beard going on here. It's time to maybe grow up. What kind of man calls himself a baby?
Yeah, I mean, like, for real,
point,
dude.
Phil. You didn't by chance call me. You didn't by chance call me years ago and say the same thing, did you?
No, I've never even heard of you before tonight, man. I just called in.
That's awesome. Thank you for that.
Trying to be funny, man.
No, I appreciate your call. You remind me of a call I had some time ago that it's just sounding like a parallel.
But you probably was, like, you know what I mean?
They were probably right as well. I mean, now I got enough.
They call you like a couple years ago.
They kind of
you
make
probably
a good
still
point.
Wasn't a baby.
I mean, you guys kind of killing it with that, so I appreciate that, Phil. You heard about me through Jesse?
Yeah, dude, I love Jesse, man. Damn, I like his message.
I know, man.
I think he's a good guy, man. A lot of women have self-esteem issues, and he sticks out for them. And then, there's a lot of, the other shit.
Well, thanks for your call, sir. Appreciate that, man. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, man. Y'all have a good one.
Call me again. All right. Amazing. Let's do some of these super chats and all that. I appreciate everybody. Thanks for the support. Amazing viewers on Rumble. My members, thanks for being in there. Thank you, G Fuentes. Is it G Fuentes? Says, Knit, it was a good, interesting, and informative video on audio equipment. Thank you for that. I hope that's at least made you think outside of the box a little bit. He says he has not seen that video, the tested video that I mentioned, but he'll watch it over the weekend. Let me know what you think. And I think maybe we could put together some kind of homebrew proprietary Anchor Baby test here. Figure out some of these claims for ourselves. It's all fascinating. Huh? Thank you, Lin Yen Chin, for the back-to-back support. John Zimmer, appreciate that very much. Always generous. Madi Ubaldo, thank you for that. Super chat here says, you're a hero, Nick. I love you, my friend. Much love. Back at you, Madi. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Angban, thank you for that. says with Joel absent, you got to learn some dance moves. It's on the list. We'll get to it. Right. Appreciate all the super chats, everybody. Very generous. Thank you. We got. Thank you very much, Steve. Very generous here on buymeacoffee.com/anchor, baby. Eric coming in strong with some super chats, with some coffees. Thank you so much, Eric. Says, every time we prosecute a man for a woman retroactively withdrawing consent, we create more victims. Women become victims because we allow them to be victims. Free Diddy. Eric, appreciate your coffees here. Continues, he's got more. He says, women prey on celebrities for the chance to party and have sex with them. Then they extort the celebrity for partying and having sex with them. Free Diddy. Eric is serious here. He's got more to say about this. Definitely spurred on by the Diddy segment. And I think we can concur on some of this. Free Diddy. Sluts are losers, he says. Free Diddy. Women refuse to acknowledge the truth because it doesn't speak highly of their behavior. Old story, Eric. He says, free Diddy once more. And last one here from Eric. The story of life. When women don't protect virtue, society falls into degeneracy. The fallen state. The end. Free Diddy. Yeah, like I said, it's the sex trafficking charges didn't stick. And I was looking around like, guys, you don't see how this is weird? Like, why are they calling this sex trafficking? Some of you guys even said, like, let's get off it, Nick. Like, why are you trying to defend Diddy? I'm like, I'm not trying to defend Diddy. I mean, look, it looks weird. It's just, we're talking about serious legal things. And it seems that's nothing about it is serious and legal. They're calling it sex trafficking. And then here, the sex trafficking charges were dropped and the RICO charges. And I'm like, see, guys, this is what I was talking about. I ain't no lawyer, but you get it. We don't have to rehash. Thank you so much. One more person here. I won't mention it. You said it. Don't mention it. I won't mention it. But thanks for the support, honestly. Very generous. Thank you so much. Amazing. All right, y'all. That's it. What else here? That's it. All right, folks. That's the topics, the calls, the super chats, and everything. What else? I don't know. There's nothing else here, folks. Either you call me right now, or that's it. We're done, skis. Folks, I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back tomorrow for more American Anchor, baby. Thursday's here already. Make sure you like, subscribe. You're following the channel. You leave a comment. Tell me what you like, what you don't like. Other than that, make sure you, like I said, leave a like, subscribe, follow, and all that. It helps the channel when you interact and you leave a little comment and all that. And that's it, folks. Take care. That's it from me. Dave, appreciate that, Triple T. Nice to see you in there in the chat. Amazing. All right, folks. Take care. I'll be back tomorrow. But for now, goodbye. Little Nick, too. He's got to say bye-bye.
The views, information, thoughts, and opinions expressed during this show are the individual's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the JLP Network or Bond. Their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. The JLP Network and Bond name and all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service.